I think at NASA, we've had a perception that the commercial research community is going to take more risks, be more cutting edge, be more open to trying new things and putting money on it, and that the university community is more conservative, thinking about whether or not they really want to test a hypothesis and moves more slowly. That's led us to assume that the commercial research community is less risk averse and the university research community is more risk averse in trying something that might be a high risk, high return kind of experiment. And actually, the opposite is true. University researchers are usually on 3 to 5 year grants. Once they get the grant, it is a grant, and they have to do something in that area. But if it doesn't turn out to be exactly what they proposed, that's tolerated. And they're really judged on the basis of the quality of the publications that come from the research. So they have a lot of room to discover something with that grant money. But in the private sector, researchers, R&D departments are really driven by quarterly earnings. And so when they come forward to their management with, hey, I'd like to try this thing on the space station, and their management says, what? Are you kidding? That management is really thinking, are you going to have a payoff for that in 3 months? And of course, our human spaceflight timelines, we really have to challenge them to support research turnarounds within 3 months. So what we've found on the space station is that the commercial R&D community is more risk averse. The university research community, they may move slower because science moves slowly, but they're more willing to try interesting ideas if they can get a shot at it. Because commercial R&D is risk averse, if we go to them with a model where we're going to try to charge them for transportation and infrastructure and services, those same sunk costs, then we make the platform seem absolutely unacceptable. So we can really kill that relationship rapidly. I think over history, there have been times when we've looked to the commercial sector as a panacea for helping to cover operations costs. And I think that model really doesn't work very well. It would be nice if it was that way. It would really help out our budgets and so forth. But because of this quick return need that commercial R&D has, they really aren't willing to take a risk on a platform unless it doesn't cost any differently than that same kind of research would cost in their own intramural labs. On the university side, it's funny, the thing that has most damaged our relationships with universities is not having reliable, frequent grant opportunities. So when NSF or NIH cultivates a research community, they have annual or biannual opportunities in every discipline. And what that means for a university researcher is they can propose to something, and if they don't get funding that year, they can turn it around, respond to the comments, and try again the next year. But at NASA, when we've had research funding opportunities, we typically, in many of our organizations, hit a discipline not every year, sometimes every 2 to 3 years. And we can't even always tell investigators when their discipline will be available again. That and the perceived risk to getting the spaceflight flown quickly so that graduate students couldn't finish a master's degree waiting for a flight opportunity are the two things that have inhibited our relationship with universities. In the space station, we've been helping to improve those, both by trying to have more frequent grant opportunities now that we're at full utilization, but also by using placeholder techniques so that we're sure that we can fly off experiments within 6 to 18 months. And then and as we're working with more investigators and they're getting familiar with this new rapid return mode, we're gradually helping them quit worrying about the experience that they had during assembly when they might wait 4 or 5 years and grad students would completely move on before the experiment would fly. Just to recap, 2 things that exploration should pay attention to. The first is that a user pay model is not going to work in anything but a very mature discipline where the entire scientific community is sure that they absolutely need that asset for their research. If they feel that they have other options or have any uncertainty at all, the user pay model will kill it. And that's very true for commercial R&D, which people think might be very open to a user pay model, but in actuality, they're more risk averse. And so they're very sensitive to a user pay model and the additional costs that incurs. And then having the right kinds of frequent opportunities to cultivate and grow that community Our goal today is that by the end of life of ISS, we'll have developed mature enough research communities that they could sustain a future user pay model. And probably by that point, NASA won't be in the picture at all. It would then shift to a fully commercial model, just like ocean exploration or exploration of the Arctic is enabled by commercial providers that are contracted with. Scientifically, what we've learned is it takes time to cultivate these research communities. Science takes time and technology development takes time. So now that we're through that threshold of developing all our technologies to build the space station, now we're ready to use it as a platform to test future technologies. And that also is going to be a multi-year process that will take a decade or more. Similarly, our research communities are just getting started, and it will also take them a decade or more to really document and have multiple follow-on experiments so that fields are making advances and the evidence for what you're accomplishing by doing things in space is there so that the science matures and the understanding of whether this platform is needed over the long term emerges from the scientific results. The challenge for space exploration is in an engineering culture, we want our returns to be kind of on a milestone schedule. And it was funny, I got questions the day that we announced assembly complete. We had the press release and said assembly is now complete. And I got calls from the New York Times saying, so what have you accomplished? And I had to say, look, we're just starting because it's going to take multi-years, multi-investigations, scientists doing investigations, getting results, publishing them, designing new investigations, and following on. And that's how science works. Publications can take 2 to 5 years from when the data is completed on orbit. So just because the astronaut got done touching the experiment doesn't mean the experiment, the knowledge has been extracted from that. So at best, it's a decade of continuous, high-profile, full-on research for the space station before we'll know what all those different scientific returns will be. We have hints from the things that we squeaked into the assembly period, and we're glad we did those during assembly because that has given us great examples to use for the dialogue about should ISS, say, be extended from 2020 to 2024? Should it be extended from 2024 to a full 30-year lifespan in 2028? But that dialogue back and forth with our stakeholders really is dependent on the continuous role of discoveries and resources and ongoing research that it will have to carry out over the next 10 years.